Yeah, there you go. Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to this event on career in sustainability, hosted by the Energy Futures Lab. My name is Julian, and I'm following an MSc in Sustainable Energy Futures, also being organized by the Energy Futures Lab, and I'll be chairing this event. For those of you joining us for the first time, the Energy Futures Lab is one of 7 global institutes at Imperial College London. It was established in 2005 to address the world's major energy challenges by bringing together teams from a variety of research backgrounds to carry out multidisciplinary and high-impact research. Today, our panel consists of, left to right, Sebastian Dunnett, who is a senior officer at the UN World Conservation Monitoring Center, Uzumaka Namora, who's an advisor on climate change at the Commonwealth Secretariat, and Kristen Marin, who is an energy transition and sustainability associate at Ampersand Partners. And today we'll first go into a panel discussion in which they'll be able to introduce themselves and their careers after leaving Imperial, after which there will be a Q&A session for you and the people online to ask questions, both general and specific to the people in the panel. And then afterwards, don't forget, we have drinks outside where you can also discuss further, well, things you want to discuss with the panelists today. So maybe just starting off with Sebastian, could you share with us, the audience, how your career has developed since leaving Imperial College and how you became interested in pursuing a career in sustainability?
Yeah, this was actually sent out on the list of questions to us, and it's a really boring answer. I mean, I've always been into the environment, and so I kind of knew I was always going to that. I wanted to be David Attenborough when I was little, and suddenly quite quickly realised everyone else wanted to do that too. So I just kind of had to shift that dream. I did my master's here in environmental technology. I can see some environmental technology people going to talk to the other day in the crowd, so thanks for coming, appreciate it. After that, I worked in sustainability consultancy for a while, kind of boutique consultancy in Oxford. Did a bit of in-house consulting, CBRE, or strategy consultancy, and then my time's been split between, where I work at the moment, the UN Environment Programme World Conservation Monitoring Center, which is not a short name, it's not a great acronym either, UNEP-WCMC, doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. And between then I was studying for a PhD in renewable energy and biodiversity, so it was looking at whether we can hit both renewable energy and biodiversity goals with the current land that we have. And sorry, just quickly, at the moment, working along that theme, advocating for nature in an energy transition. So working with mining companies who mine for critical minerals that we need, but also renewable energy infrastructure risk mitigation strategy.
Yeah, well, same question for Uzumaka.
Hi everyone, Uzumaka Namora, Uzo for short. It was here at Imperial that I realized Uzo meant a Greek drink from one of my classmates. It's quite strong, I don't really like it, but anyway. So I did the environmental technology course as well, energy policy option. And while reflecting, I'm like, wow, that was 18 years ago. So things still look the same, but that's a few changes. But in terms of my career development, I would say I started off as an energy and strategy advisor, and then a sustainable development officer for energy at EMRA, the East Midlands Regional Assembly. And then in recent times, like I've been introduced, my role is climate change advisor at the Commonwealth Secretariat. And that's just to say, I see an evolution in terms of how working in the environmental space has really evolved. It wasn't so popular when I was studying, and this leads me to how I came about finding myself in this space. So in a similar lecture hall during my fourth year in school, for the first time I heard the broadband definition of sustainable development, which is the ability to meet the needs of the present without jeopardizing the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that kind of resonated with me. Now, at the time, I was studying geology, petroleum geology, but then this was within an environmental geology lecture. And that was at the back of my mind. I'm from an oil-rich country, And within the course of my studies and my work, I had the opportunity of working in the oil rig. And I just said, I knew that there is a better way to exploit our natural resources. We can do it in a more sustainable and judicious manner. So that's what piqued my interest. And in looking to study for my MSc, I was looking for a course that could actually support that dream. And I came across several universities, but obviously I chose Imperial. The energy policy option really resonated with me. Since leaving Imperial, I would say, especially when I studied, so many things were being discussed at the time. I remember being in class, and on that day, the lecturer told us this is the day that the EU emissions trading scheme was coming into force. There were so many relevant topics that we looked at that were timely in the day. And when I started my early career, many times I had to go back to my notes. I found them so useful in the course of carrying out my work. So over time, I'm happy that the political will has really advanced. There's still so much to be done, if not we will be in our job. What I do at the moment at the Commonwealth, Commonwealth made up of 56 member states across the Caribbean, Africa, and Indo-Pacific region. Of course, we have members from like the UK, Canada, New Zealand, etc. But the Commonwealth has over 76% of small island developing states. We also like to refer to them as BOS, Big Ocean Sustainable Development States. But these are really vulnerable to climate change. So there's a lot of advocacy and trying to make sure that our member states are resilient to the impacts of climate, but also contributing in terms of mitigating and advancing the opportunities, maximizing those opportunities. In particular, I coordinate the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub. There is a climate finance gap, and we have to, bridge that gap so that countries can actually implement climate action. And in so doing, I'm also passionate about streaming gender and youth into all of this, so that the vulnerable people that we're working for actually benefit from the work that we do. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And Kristen, maybe same question for you.
Sure. So my career journey in sustainability is far less interesting, but hopefully still useful for you today. 10 years ago, when I started my sustainability journey, it was actually, on social development, social policy and development. Back then, when you said sustainability, that's what people would tend to jump to. My focus being on, as you said, the role of young people and the role that they play in mainstreaming all of this. So worked in the NGO sector, interestingly enough. And then where I was based, I'm from Belize in the Caribbean. I'm one of the Swiss, small island developing state. You might pick up the twang a little bit. So in my office, I could see the reef. I could hear the reef all day hitting against, just hearing the waves. And places that I grew up, beaches that I grew up on, they're disappearing. They have disappeared. So where I used to have a white beach, there's now rocks, stones, people trying to protect their land. So I said, okay, I absolutely can't sit here anymore and just watch my environment literally disappear from me. So I said, I need to go back. I need to understand the system a bit better, kind of transition more into the environmental phase. And decided to kind of restart my career by pursuing the Climate Change Management and Finance program at Imperial 3 years ago. And it was brilliant, everyone in class, and then COVID hit halfway while I was there. But despite that, Imperial still gave us the opportunity to, whatever career you want in climate, you can feasibly get a foot in the door. So one thing I can tell you today is, you have a brilliant university backing you, and it will allow you to get a first foot in the door, no matter where you go and what industry you try to pursue. But once you get the foot in the door, it's up to you to really sell yourself and sell your skills in a very impactful way. So that's what I hope we can get a bit into today on this time.
Nice, thank you, Kristen. I was wondering if there was already some questions from the audience. If not, then I already have some questions which I want to ask. So maybe first for Sebastian, how do you collaborate with organizations and stakeholders to promote biodiversity conservation and sustainable use of natural resources in your work?
Yeah, it's a step. Right. My mum is angry. I cover sustainability very much kind of biodiversity side, and working at UNEP-WCMC, I work within what used to be known as the business and biodiversity team, and is now the nature economy team. But essentially, we're the interface between us and kind of corporate entities. Quite a broad range of sectors that we work with, and what I'd say is the power dynamic has shifted quite a lot, even within the 10 years that I've been working. Well, 2014 I started working there. I was 16 and left, and I've just gone back there now. And the power relationship really changed. I think you were talking a bit about this, and that we used to kind of go around a bit cap in hand to corporations saying, could we maybe ask you to be a bit less destructive in your kind of operational activities? And it really was that, there was a team of 6 of us, and we felt quite powerful. I felt quite powerless in what we were asking companies to do. The opposite is true now. I genuinely believe that. And this is part of what I came here to say to you guys, really, is that the dynamic has changed between sustainability professionals and stakeholders that work with, in my case, corporates, in that we are in a position now to ask a lot more of them than we used to. So we have companies coming to us now, asking, what on earth do we do with all this data? This new framework's come out. It's called Task Force for Nature Financial Disclosures, TNFD. I forget the order of it. TNFD. It kind of follows TCFD, which is the carbon one, and it's largely what we were telling the whole time, which was, there are big risks from the way you're operating in your businesses. And suddenly they all come back to us and say, right, okay, what we're doing with this. So it's quite a nice position to be in. So we work largely through partnerships with businesses, through frameworks like that. My team, the centre, works with other stakeholders, but yes, that's currently how I work.
Right. Thank you very much. Maybe for Kristen, along the same lines, how do you work with clients who identify and implement sustainable solutions that meet their needs and goals, maybe from like a resiliency standpoint?
Yeah, I didn't mention that yet. So I'm in consulting now, sustainability consulting for a boutique firm. We'll be very real at the moment. No client will really come to you and say, oh, we're really ambitious. We want to, we're a mission-driven company. We want to implement sustainability in the best possible way. You have 10 years to do it. That's the ideal. That never happens. It's always, oh, there's a new regulation coming. The risk is high. Now we need to do something really quickly. But fundamentally, sustainability is a change program. It's transformative by nature. So before, where people were working very incrementally, putting one thing in, maybe emissions reporting, and they feel like that's the end goal. That's really incremental steps that they've been taking. So as a consultant, you're tasked with the incredible opportunity to help explain urgency in a way that matters to them. So in business terms, it's not enough to just say, oh, your competitors are doing it, or, oh, it's the right thing, or this is where everyone is moving. You have to understand their business strategy. So when we're talking about corporates, it could be governments, it could be anyone as well. Understand what their mission is, their vision, and their strategy, and break it down. So if your strategy is to give, work on margins, like you're a low-cost product, margins could be energy efficiency, and that connects to climate. So you need to go in and dig and really understand how sustainability connects to their existing business objectives, and then explain the urgency of how sustainability might change that strategy and change fundamentally how they have to think, and what the best way to do that where it doesn't tremendously destroy their existing company and take them to the ground and then have to bring them up. So you want to take them on a smooth transition as best as possible, help them get buy-in from their employees. It mostly tends to start getting buy-in from senior leadership, but they're still thinking profitability. That's what I care about. So it's the same thing with biodiversity. How do you create that urgency and that story of these sustainability topics are going to fundamentally change how you do business? And so it's in your best interest to start thinking about it now, because the closer you get to 2030, 2040, all hell's going to break loose. And so by you anticipating that, you're future-proofing your business. And you should write that down. Every business wants to hear that. Future proofing your business. So yeah, I think that's 1, 2, 3. Explaining the urgency, connecting it to what they know about, and just try to show that you're helping them.
Very cool. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, are there any questions from the audience or maybe online? No, not yet. Fine. Oh, there's one question.
Question is, you mentioned the climate finance gap. So what could we do in a career context to go and bridge that gap? And also, I've got quite a concern on greenwashing and how much of it is just not really effective. So yeah, could you expand on that bit?
Sure. So, and when we talk about the climate finance gap, we will break it down to climate mitigation, climate adaptation, but overall, and there's several reports out there, UNEP has done quite a lot in that regard as well. And I think a key fundamental issue is the tracking of climate finance, the definition, the methodologies for tracking what is climate finance, and also looking at the flows, how is it flowing? Is it getting to the intended beneficiaries? I think not to get too bogged down or overwhelmed with the numbers, the reality is that action is needed and urgently. How do we also climate proof our infrastructure? How do we make sure that even when you build new infrastructure, you're not building it in flood zones and areas? There's so many things to think to, but overall, the means of implementation of this climate finance is one. The other being capacity technology. You need to think about it within the context of your overall economy, so the economy, people, society as well. And the reality is that the money is needed now because the impacts of climate change is already happening. You have many people, again, you talk about the news, we had some work to tell you 2 years ago. It's real, you know, the impact's already there and people need the resources now to adapt. At the same time, we need to mitigate so that we prevent future impacts from building up. And then there's also the loss and damage from the last climate conference. There was a discussion about the loss and damage fund where there's irreparable loss. It's happened, but people need to be compensated. Where is this money going to come from? Even when you identify existing resources, how do we ensure that it is effectively and efficiently deployed? So I hear you, and I think Kristen alluded to it a bit in terms of the second part of your question about greenwashing. People want to make a difference, but we have to make sure we're able to give them the right tools, give them the right, down to methodology, down to what you said about the strategy, to make sure they're able to do this thing in the right way. I don't know, there's so many people wanted to do the right thing, but at the end of the day, it's not just about ticking a box. Thankfully, there's universal standards out there. Sebastian has mentioned 1 or 2 of them. But how do we make sure they get better? There are some committees that have been set up at the UN level, which is the international standard framework on climate, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. You have the task force on climate finance that's been set up. And hopefully with these things evolving, I had the opportunity to be on the climate finance tracking task teams set up by the NDBs, and also there's the annual biennial report on climate finance, where you have rigorous checks to make sure that these things over time are more stringent. You have independent bodies and committees to evaluate so that we avoid what has happened in the past, the greenwashing, but to make sure that countries that have made pledges also redeem those pledges and it's not double counted. It's all about, and this is where you come in as well, because this is where the work is. There's different aspects to this, there's the finance, there's the business aspect, there's the economy, there's the strategy, there's also the monitoring and evaluation. So there's a loop. And the monitoring and evaluation is one area that's being strengthened regularly. I don't know if you follow we call it the Conference of the Parties of the UNEP-WCMC. Every year, we had Glasgow, the climate conference at Glasgow, so each of them I'm alluding to, where we have the highest political leadership from heads of government cascading down all the way to technical experts coming in one forum over time to find out ways to ensure that we actually achieve the goals that we set out in our climate plans, otherwise known as the nationally determined contributions. So yes, I think right now it's in a better situation. Many people can't just greenwash anymore. People are more aware. It's not just enough to say, yes, we reduce our emissions. What is backing that analysis? And yeah, there's a lot of work in there. I actually worked as a consultant in the UK with Carbon Asset Management Company, and that was a critical part of the work that was being done, down to energy efficiency, labeling, etc. So you also have like CDM, the Clean Development Mechanism. So there's several methodologies out there in a nutshell to make sure that we have stringent calculations and the monitoring bodies to avoid that, so that people have credible measures in place.
What skills do you think are most valuable in your career?
Is it a question directed to someone or just in general?
Just in general, like what skills do we need to start building up in order to be successful?
I can start. So I know, yes, we're in the university, and I believe when it comes to sustainability, I was just chatting to Kristen before we started speaking, and I said, because I'm not interested, that it wasn't on offer at the time when I came. So actually, to say transferable skills are even as important as the technical skills that you would get. So yes, you have courses now that are labeled climate change or sustainability finance, which is important. But you could actually be in any other profession and be a sustainability champion. You could be doing procurement, and then you make sure that the procurement, channels and sources are more efficient. So I just wanted to put that out there. For me, when I started in my career, I just realized there were so many skeptics. A lot of what I was doing was awareness raising and capacity building. It evolved so much so that at the highest level you have the political will, and people actually now want to do, not even only want to have to, the regulations in place now. It's important to get sectoral knowledge. We don't work in silos. We have to work across the economy, the spectrum, and you could be working in energy, you could be working in water, you could be working in transport. But we're here, Energy Futures Lab. Any sector you look at, energy is important. So the technical skills are really important, but then transferable skills, be it communications, advocacy. I do a lot of negotiations, but I had to sign up for a negotiation course just to be able to put across, the objectives and discussions before the stakeholders being engaged, especially at the ministerial level within countries. So have an open mind. I think attitude is also important. In this field of sustainability, you may very well always be the first, or you may think of doing things in a different way. So you should be able to have that persuasiveness around what you do, but in a collaborative manner. You need a multidisciplinary team to be able to get the solutions that you desire. So yes, whatever degree you're doing, I believe you can weave sustainability into it, but you also need to be a good communicator. You need to have a candid spirit. You may always have a position of, but yeah, being able to advocate for that as well.
Can I do that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think towards the end of that, I kind of really resonated with me is the people who came to hear me talk the other day will know this, but I'm not sure whether it's a skill or not, but skills in kind of social sciences and behavioral psychology, that for me, I don't have, and I think would be fantastic if I did have them, because I think it's a real growth kind of skill in sustainability. Because you're nodding loads, that's great. Because it's, another hat that I have is I work for the IPBES, which is kind of UN's biodiversity body. It's the equivalent of kind of IPCC on the climate side. And it's just producing vast volumes of research about how badly we're affecting the natural environment. And a lot's been produced on that subject. You don't have to look far to see how bad it's going. What we do need is people to say, right, well, what's gonna change people's behaviors and attitudes? And again, I've used this example before, but apparently, I don't know how true it is, Boris Johnson, lifelong climate skeptic, he was convinced apparently of the dangers of climate change in 11 slides by Professor Richard Betts. That's what I'm looking for. It's just, that kind of spark that changes people's opinions on the behaviors that they're doing. So that for me, I think would be a big skill that I would love to have, but I don't have. On the question.
And just building on that, right? It's even taking it down a level into practicality, being able to answer the so what. So you spend a lot of time in your degree as well, looking at technology feasibility. All our courses on Imperial can be quite technical. And so you produce this piece of research and you say, okay, this technology is quite feasible, or this seems to work. And then it stops there. You can't let it stop there. You have to answer the so what. Okay, so what does that mean for policy? So what does that mean for my company? If you tell me offsets they're trash. So what? So what do I need to do now? Okay, we need to start transforming the market. How can you as an individual company or as an individual within a company drive market transformation? So if you think of the so what in whatever you do, whatever essay you write, that's what's going to set you apart. I do all the recruiting for the consulting firm I'm at, and that's what we text. We go in with a really big question and see who can break it down for you into the so what, into the top 3 things. If I ask you, okay, what does the UK need to meet net zero? I don't want to hear about all the different technologies that you've been researching in the course. I want you to tell me, look, we need to reduce energy efficiency. We need to electrify and procure in a way that drives market transformation. And we need to think about carbon removal in 10 seconds. So it's communicating all the brilliant knowledge that you gain here. And on that note as well, meeting people where they're at. So when you go into a room, if you're the one speaking the most with a client, you're probably not doing it very well. You need to understand what the challenges are of the people that you're speaking to, what's motivating them on behavior, what's going to make them tick, and then you go in and express what you need to with the knowledge that you have. So I think those are key skills.
So thank you. Yeah, another question.
In the same line, so my question is, it seems we are seeing that effect of climate change and the effects are very real across the globe. So how the business can contribute in climate action and at the same time be profitable? Because a business to be profitable in its own sense. So what are the things they should do? Being profitable and as well as at the same time contributing climate action.
I'm going to defer to my other panel members because I think I've fallen out of love with kind of profitability a bit, not all the way to pure Marxism, but I think there needs to be quite a rework of our society. And so I don't think that's all I'm going to say on that. I think there's wider transformations that need to happen. And I think to link in with my degree here, so environmental technology, I think it probably still does it, where it gives a kind of a broad range of different environmental kind of almost careers. You have law, economics, policy, and I fell in love with the economics one when I was there because I hadn't really done economics before, and I was like, oh, wow, like this is going to work. Like market mechanisms, like this is the key. And Uzo was mentioning the EU ETS. I did my master's on whether we could have a similar system for biodiversity, biodiversity offsets. I'm flabbergasted the idea is still around, if I'm honest. It was a terrible idea 10 years ago. It's a worse idea now. And yeah, so I've been through the stage of thinking that we have to have some kind of profitability in a business in climate action, and I've fallen out of love with it. So I'm not going to go more into that because I think they'll probably disagree with me.
Okay, so my take on this is let's look at sustainability, look at its environment, social, and then the economic side. We could also look at it in terms of the 3 Ps, so people, planet, and then profit. I don't think it's either or. And you said business, so it's wide ranging, In the beginning, Christy touched on this a bit, but for example, let's look at banks now. You know, you come in and you say you want to invest in some infrastructure. You have to make sure that it's not going to be a stranded asset at the end of the day. We could look at it in terms of a business whereby you want to set up and you want to build maybe a factory. I'm just giving you an example. I mean, you think about your location. You don't want to build your building in a place that is at risk to flooding. But then let's also look at your value chain. You know, what would you do to make sure at the end of the day you still exist? You can look at it from different aspects. Profitability, of course, maybe you're talking about, you know, finance, margin, yes. And when you look at the full picture of what it is you're doing as a business, I like the phrase that was used, that meet people where they're at. I'm just trying to think of an example. When I was a consultant, we had the UK Carbon Trust, and this is the local authority, so not necessarily business, but even universities. They were looking at their carbon management strategy, and at the end of the day, our communications plan for that program, working with local authorities across the UK and universities as well. But we don't even have to use the word climate, as long as we're able to show the decision makers, especially those in charge of finance, the finance directors, how much money they were going to make by being efficient, be it across their procurement or even their energy use. We were able to communicate with them. And it's similar with business, because I feel if you're a business and then maybe because of the impacts of climate change, which could be flooding or drought, you no longer exist. At the end of the day, your whole business, this is not even about profit anymore, like your whole business, including your capital, is gone. But let's turn it the other way. There are opportunities that are there when you address issues to benefit not just your business, but to make sure that what you're doing is actually, you know, not harming the environment any further. Or I know there's this whole CSR element, but that's also part of the wider sustainability debate. You're actually better off, and you're actually going to get more investors and consumers as well. So this is just generic terms, but I just want us to think of it in a more positive light, to look at the opportunities, and you're better off in the long run when you address the holistic.
I'm just going to quickly I feel like I'm just going to summarize exactly what's been said. Fundamental shifts in what we think a business is key. So if you've never heard of the B Corp revolution, it's moving away from the obsession with shareholders and looking towards stakeholder capitalism. So that's one little movement that's happening at the moment. Whether it's the end all, probably not, but it's one move. So it's trying to adjust like legal requirement that businesses care about profitability because their shareholders care about their dividends. That's when you get down to the root cause of it. So fundamental shifts, yes. What the end state should look like, that's up for debate. That's why you're brilliant and you can sit and think about that. Until we get there, the language of business will always be risk and opportunities. So the whole point is to express the urgency of climate and sustainability without, making people feel overwhelmed. So risks, the regulation that's coming to TNFD, TCFD, all of these things that are coming at them, stranded assets, that's a very real risk as we get closer to tipping points, right? Speaking that in a way that they care about. And opportunities, so you said you work at CBRE, right? So commercial real estate is a brilliant example. By renovating your buildings or retrofitting and making that quite sustainable, or even in your new builds, if you ingrain sustainability from the start, from inception through to construction, when you're ready to get tenants in there, they're going to pay you a premium to say, I work in the most sustainable building in London or in the UK. And when you're ready to sell as a developer, as a property owner, when you're ready to sell that, you also sell it as a premium. So that's an opportunity, that's value. So again, it's in the absence of a fundamental shift in business thinking, how do you communicate these base thoughts into language that they care about, meeting them where they're at. So that's how I kind of summarize both.
Any questions from the audience? Yeah, in the back with the laptop. Yeah, you. Go ahead.
Sorry, earlier in the conversation, there was sustainability champion. I think your sentence was have any career be a sustainability champion. What does that? What does this champion do?
I don't know if you mentioned it.
I can start.
I think it was you. Yeah.
Yes. So I can start. And interestingly, I'm just going to start with when I was a sustainability champion. So when I joined the African Development Bank, this was in 2009. I think the bank was at a point where, you know, it was being proactive and wanted to, you know, embrace all the new things coming out. So there was a unit that was set up called Gender, Sustainable Development and Climate Change. And they didn't really know what to do. But I found it really interesting, it was exciting, that's why I joined, you know, put into practice all what we've learned. But I found out that even the name Sustainability Champion, I tried to coin that out for different people in different departments within the bank. So people in the transport sector, energy sector, more like encouraging them to take on this beautiful strategy that we've written out, but they had to implement it because you have to work with them. But in terms of getting them to understand what the sustainability issues were, but also be drivers and advocates for that in their respective departments. Now, what did they do? What was their terms of reference? It was pretty much understanding as an institution what it was we could do internally, but also supporting all the work we did across the region. Quite an important role, I must say, because especially at that time, many people at the bank, even the board of governors were like, why do we even have to look at climate change? The African continent emits less than 4% of greenhouse gas emissions globally. So they were the ones who were able to break down how we as an institution could implement what we were advocating our member countries to do internally, but also in the work that they did. Now, just to give a bit of explanation, the AFDB, like the World Bank, to put big, huge infrastructure projects. Now, imagine going into a country and you're building across countries, like length kilometers of roads, and then you're not even thinking about climate resilience. You're not even doing analysis to see the potential of flooding or how the floods could impact the roads you are building. So much money going into these roads, and then they're washed away because you did not put in adaptation measures. You know, so we had to work with those sustainability champions to build the understanding and capacity within the institutions to implement all of these strategies on climate sustainability, etc. I think we also had to give them incentives to add that to their work, and we were able to organize, core programs within, and also I think we had a trip to Cambridge University for the climate sustainability leadership training, etc. But I think also giving that understanding that the investment projects they were working on were climate proof, climate resilient. So 10 years, 25 years from now, whatever, wind turbines, roads, as I mentioned, schools, etc., have climate adaptation and mitigation measures ingrained. So we also work with them to tell us, how would you do this better if we knew this was coming? And we also had to build on their expertise. And this is what I was saying about being able to do sustainability within the broad sense of the word in whatever capacity you find yourself. I remember working with an investment officer in our private sector team then, and this just said to me, look, whether you call it climate finance, whether you call it finance, we need to make sure the project structuring is done so that this project actually delivers on what it's meant to do. And if you're saying extra money is coming with extra work, you have to let me know why this 20% is going to give me almost 100% of the work in terms of doing further analysis, doing further calculations, to make sure that when we say climate finance coming to that project, it's not greenwashing. And it comes with a lot of additional work, but at the end of the day, when you're happy that you're taking the project through to closure, and this project would last, would be resilient. So it's both ways. Yeah.
I mean, sorry, I take the idea of sustainability champions as the kind of idea of every job's a climate job, right? So I would like to move past the stage of us needing to highlight people as sustainable champions in certain teams to saying, actually, it's just part of the job, whatever job you have. And so I did a bit of time in local authority in London, in Hammersmith and Fulham, in their climate team. It's called Climate Emergency Team. They're a very, very good team, actually. And one of the best thing you pushed through actually was for procurement, anything over £10,000 in Hammersmith and Fulham has to go through climate and ecology implications. They have to go through a spreadsheet of these different lines of it saying, this £10,000, what is it doing for the climate? Is it a good impact, a bad impact? Same for ecology, kind of number of questions on that. And it really pushed the idea that whatever job you have in the council, you can always make sustainable decisions. And it's not just the remit of the climate team. To be honest, the end goal of any kind of climate or nature team is to not exist. So yeah.
If I could just illustrate very quickly as well. If we take it down to this building that we're sat in at the moment, what I think the climate champion is not someone who has it in their title. Of course, that they'll care about it, but it's the engineer or the facility manager who's going to say, actually, it's really cold in here and we're using a lot of energy to make it really cold or really warm. What if we tested it and reduced the degrees a little bit? And then they do that for an entire year. And then they do it across all the buildings. And you look at how much carbon we save at the end of the year. That's the climate champion. The ones that have come in and made it clean up after us, after this, if they say, actually, if we switched our cleaning materials to maybe a more sustainable option with less plastic, then they did it again across the entire state. These are climate champions. These are your everyday people doing everyday jobs, but thinking about the impact that they can make. So you might be a lawyer, you might be a banker, whatever you go into at the end of this, it's thinking about where you can make the impact, where is the biggest impact you can make, and drive small actions in a big way. That can be a starting point. So just an illustration.
Right, thank you. I think I saw some other questions in the back. Yeah, you go first.
Hi. Can you hear me? Can I have a microphone? Yeah. Okay. So, full disclosure, I do work for a global bank. So, Sebastian, don't get too triggered. But I was talking to somebody in one of the big Silicon Valley companies, the sustainability unit. They said sustainability is a data problem. But of course, now I'm sitting in a bank. Data is really, really hard to come by. It's reliable data, not sustainability. And there seems to be like a desperate scramble to get a lot of data that's, I don't know, verifiable. And actually, if you look at it, it doesn't look very verifiable to me. A lot of it looks quite questionable. Like, for example, supply chain, it's super hard to track the sustainable credentials of the long supply chain because you're finding back a number of different companies and you just totally lose track of the source of materials. But every large company has to report this in their annual reports. So it seems to me there's a massive opportunity for companies to find that data, so to create data sources, to package them together, to create asset classes out of them, to turn that kind of data into a service, to use different software architectures to allow competing companies to access common data sets. All this kind of opportunity that seems to be open to people who are sitting around me, to create businesses that can create those kind of valuable resources. What have you seen, any of you on the panel, what have you seen growing either out of this this body or out across London or the UK? What organisations have you seen helping growing to to support this, desperate need for the data in big bad global banks like that.
Expensive. We are very sorry about. I was just jumping. We are kind of reliant actually on data provision in our kind of service model at UNEP-WCMC, especially in my team. It's what we've provided for a good number of decades actually. Our main data product is the world's database on protected areas, which is just giving spatial information on what areas of the world are protected. It says on the tin really. But I actually disagree that there's a lack of data. Especially in the environmental front, I think there's a lot of lack of expertise in finding and analysing that data. The main issue that we find, and perhaps you're speaking to this, is operational data. So we have quite a lot of environmental data that we can use, but we tend to find that the companies that we work with, like you say, have large, complex international supply chains, and they don't tend to know where things are sourced from when you get to the end of it. So it's all about, in the first instance, approximating as much as you can. And in that sense, you don't really need that kind of highly resolved spatial data. You just need to know, are you sourcing it from Brazil? Are you sourcing it from Colombia? Are you sourcing it from Vietnam? And then there's this kind of aggregated risks associated with that. And then, all these processes are iterative processes, right? So the TNFD, I can tell you from the inside at the moment, it's looking pretty strange, as a process, but it will eventually turn into something that drives good within the sectors. It's just getting there. So just to finish quickly, I mean, from a point of view of careers and sustainability, what this gentleman's just talked about is fantastic. Part of the reason I'm actually back at the centre I was at was because we were losing a lot of people to the private sector, because they suddenly turned around and they were like, all these reporting frameworks that have happened, we have no expertise in house to report against these. So they were kind of plucking people with those skills from the kind of environmental centres that we worked at. So in many ways, for everyone here, it's fantastic news. You have those kind of skills, you are very, very much in demand.
Tons of data is a big question, right? And as long as there's a gap in the market, people will fill it. So there's tons of companies coming in now, Sierra, BP, tons of ESG tracking software. You can just Google it and they'll come up with a top 10 list. But I think for us in the interim, until we get to this place of perfect data, perfect access to data, it's asking the question, what's good enough data? Don't get into analysis paralysis where you say, until I have this perfect piece of data, I can't do anything. That's the wrong end. So you in your careers, and data will always be a question, and this will always come up. But yeah, drive the question, what's good enough data that allows us to answer the so what question of what are we going to do and why does this matter to the entire system? It's not data for the sake of data, it's data to drive action. I think that's the banks are interesting because, like you said, you want to build products out of it. So ESG funds, sustainability funds, climate funds, what does that all mean without data? But yeah, what's good enough and what's enough to drive market transformation? That's what we need to be thinking about as sustainability professionals, not picking the box. We'll pass that.
And just to add to that, we've talked about data like it's homogeneous. The different types of data to address different issues. The type of data I would like to touch on now has to do with climate data. When you do your climate risk and vulnerability analysis, and this is actually a prerequisite to actually apply for climate finance proposal, and it is an issue, especially in countries where you've not been able to capture data from 30 years ago to demonstrate that yes, you need this climate finance, to support your impending and urgent climate adaptation needs. But there's a lot happening out there. At the UK level, there's the UK state. You also have at the international level the IPCC, and there are several standards over time that have done, comparative analysis and are able to give you generative data that you can actually extrapolate and use. We at the Commonwealth, we actually have a program, the Common Sensing Platform, whereby we're working with the UK Space Agency I'm working with Unita and UNOSAT as well to be able to get real-time data from satellite to help countries in terms of not only looking at historic climate events, but also to predict what may happen and then have an evidence base, a justifiable evidence base to assess climate finance. So there's different types of data. Data is always an issue, but there is available data. You need to be able to capture the data. You need to know what data you need to capture. And yes, it may never be final or perfect, but robust enough for you to use and access. And there are companies out there at the national and international level. There's a lot happening. So, yeah.
Very good question. I think in the sake of time, we're doing maybe one more question. So yeah, gentleman in the back.
Hi, sorry, I can better the big bad banks. I've worked much of my career in the big bad oil company as a geologist. One of the things we've seen very recently is a company like BP, which invests a ton of money in sustainable energy transition and the like, has gone about face and is now the share price has gone up. Their shareholders have asked for profit, not ideology, and this is clearly going to be a problem. And I mean, the government needs to do more to ensure that companies can operate under, towards our net zero aims. I just wondered if you got some comments on that and how we're going to get past that, because it's we need these big companies to be pulling in the same direction.
Yes.
I don't work for BP, but
It would have
I'm in sustainable energy and energy transition.
Well done. You're a reformed BP.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it was a really disappointing announcement. And to be honest, I would also disagree that the BP have funneled that much into the energy transition. I think I remember seeing some kind of analysis that they actually had put in far less than they had intended on that front as well. So it was a kind of U-turn on a U-turn, really. But you're right. I mean, this is part of, I think I went a bit far earlier. I think I latched on to you saying profitability, if I'm honest. But this is where I kind of mean that there are wider transformations that need to be made, right? So as on the IPBES assessment that I'm on, it's the Nexus assessment. We're kind of working on biodiversity, but through the lens of different other aspects of the Nexus. So water, energy, food, health. There's a parallel assessment going on at the moment called Transformative Change Assessment, and that's going off the uncomfortable truth that what we need for biodiversity recovery is out of IPBES's scope. So it's true transformational change, but up until now, obviously we, as a sector, haven't had the power to push for that. And so I honestly, talking myself over here, I don't really have an answer for that, because for me, it just points to society's misalignment with environmental goals. And, I haven't got an answer for you here, and I doubt anybody does, but, that's why we're working in this space, right? And that's why I really want to come here tonight and say, this is a fantastic space to be getting into, because, we are just starting the battle. I'm sure, I think it was mentioned earlier, and it was much the case for me in 2012, environmentalism wasn't really that thing. I was still in 2012 a bit of a quaint person working environmental. Now it balloons and it's fantastic, and we have the weight of everyone behind us. So this is the kind of thing we can push for.
It's the risk of being an early mover, right? So that's a good case of that. But you need to take the lessons from that. So that's where the role of government can come in, and the role of really creativity, especially creativity sitting in this room. So what the UK Bank used to do, for example, UK Green Infrastructure Bank or Green Bank, one of them, they acted as a lighthouse investor. So being an early mover does incur these risks. You need to kind of test the market, because once the whole market is transformed, that's where things get interesting. So they would de-risk, they would look at innovative projects, startups, or whatever would be coming out of research space, and they would de-risk it either by providing guarantees, providing grants, whatever it is to make this a bit less risky. And then you start channeling private finance in, and that's how you scale solutions. So you do need this partnership between government, between corporates, but not necessarily in the way we say it, very high level of, yeah, we need policy, we need regulation. It's getting into the nitty-gritty of how can we all work together to de-risk and scale solutions, test them, be innovative, be willing to try things, and if they fail, that's fine, you learn something from it. So that's where you need to be thinking as well if you pursue whatever career, it's government, wherever. It's, okay, how do we get beyond the conversation of high level? Let's work together and what does that actually look like and how do we drive it on that sort of thing. So that's the BP story.
To add to that, I think we've been talking about the energy transition for quite a long time now. When would we get there? When would we transit and have full, clean energy? Even the energy security issue as well. This is where accountability comes in. And I think all the stakeholders are important, as been alluded to. We have all our countries who have signed up to the international agreements. When you cascade that down, as a country, you will achieve those working within this space, you have with your businesses, including the BPs and the like. But where is the accountability? Every year we meet and do we just say the same thing again and everybody pledges again? But this is again where I feel, we talked about government, we talked about business, but people, we should also be able to demand, a change. Many people are going to go into the workforce, they didn't have pensions. Where is pension schemes being invested in? You need to start asking and demanding for this so that it's a holistic push. And with that, you find out that people, the trends will start shifting. And so till then, we're transiting, but I believe it should be scaled up and there should be accountability.
Hey, thank you very much. I think one additional question, because it's a career panel, I think maybe interesting for everyone in the room. If someone has decided to pursue a similar career as anyone of you, how would you advise them to start out with this?
So I actually did what everyone does these days and put this question to ChatGPT. And it actually, as usual, it kind of got the gist quite right of what I wanted to say, which was, it had 6 points, 4 of which were the usual kind of fluff about, networking, get experience and everything. But the first 2 were what I really wanted to emphasize, which is sustainability is a technical field, right? So one is get educated. You're all here, you're all doing the right thing in that regard. It's not a wishy-washy subject, right? You need deep expertise and you need deeper expertise now because people aren't just coming into jobs and doing the carbon, water, biodiversity. You're coming to a job to do biodiversity analysis. Or certainly I am. And the second is specialized. I think was the second one. So it's get educated and specialized. So it's a very technical field, and don't be a jack of all trades.
It's technical, but it's also exciting. I think for me, I've always been, I like challenges, and possibly because of when I studied it and what was obtainable at the time, it was always a case of this has never been done before. Maybe you're writing a renewable energy strategy for a region, or you're doing a climate change plan and a strategy for a country or a company. It was exciting. It's still exciting as well. There are challenges there, but do not be phased off. I would still say networking is important. Build on your existing network, which is your university or school. Just listening to my co-panelists today, I'm like, okay, yes, I work in Belize a lot. You talked about, you did climate finance strategy, but I wish I knew how, like 2 years ago when I was working on the climate finance strategy for Belize, and there's a new unit which was supporting, but I would still engage. We talked a lot about biodiversity. We have the Commonwealth Living Lands Charter, which is trying to bring the 3 Rio conventions together, because land touched on desertification, biodiversity, climate. So I'm going to be linking with them as well. So what am I saying? Networking is important. During my time at Imperial, we had every other Thursday, the alumni networks and drinks, and some of us didn't always turn up. But I remember when our course convener, Mr. Nigel, came to talk about, look, your career and how just engaging and networking, that is the best, you know, beyond just putting in applications. Why? You get real life examples, real life scenarios, real life people. I don't know if any of you heard, but Christy said she recruits in her organization. That's important, you know. So yeah, it's important to network. I cannot, I don't want to stress it too much, but I cannot overemphasize. Even when you get into your company, you need to find out what people are doing. You need to find out what the next person is engaging in, because that's the only way you can actually be as effective as you can building on your network. So be somebody who networks really well. Don't waste people's time, but have a plan, have a strategy. I would also say, in terms of your outlook, have an open mind, keep learning. You know, we talked about sustainability champions, but again, wherever you find yourself, you're able to weave in the aspects of sustainability in the job. Do not be put off, even if you're not sure, ask questions, always be prepared as much as you can, say what you have to say, occupy your space wherever you find yourself. Your perspective is unique. Even those questions you're asking will help the solution to be more robust. Many times I can't tell you, you just wonder, does this make sense? But then you realize, just because of your unique perspective, your experience, you're able to cause a change, which could be small or big. But the point is, do not exclude yourself, I would say. Always be present, have that I can do spirit, engage with people, of course. The last, and I had a third one in mind, and I think it's around, you know, find a need and meet it. I think wherever you have that objective of being a solution provider, those opportunities will actually come your way. There was a quote that I saw, and I thought this would be a nice one in terms of, you know, there is no favorable wind for someone who has no direction. Pretty much, you have to have a clear goal, vision, and then those opportunities will come, be it in terms of the people, or you know, you just start seeing things coming together. So I would say at the end of the day, it's important to have a vision, have a goal, work towards it, and yeah, you would find out that as you progress, things will evolve, you keep growing. We're always still in the process of learning, and it's important not to just feel like you've always arrived, but yeah, I think with those few things, hopefully, you have a good start to your career.
Again, I'm just going to summarize what people have said. Sustainability is not for the faint of heart. Half the time you'll go into an organization or company and maybe sustainability is just on the bottom of their priorities. So what's going to differentiate you, or what a key skill will be is, and this is something you can't teach, so the deep technical things you can learn and you can teach it. You can't teach passion, and you can't teach the intrinsic value or the strength of emotions that you feel towards pursuing a career in sustainability. So one practical thing that means is know your story. So probably everyone that graduates with your degree will have the technical skills. How do you differentiate even within that group? Is know your story, know what's driving you. So when people are kicking you down, you're not the priority, how do I know that you're going to keep pushing and you're going to keep innovating and you're going to keep thinking and having sustainability be the core driver for you? So again, when I'm recruiting, that's something that's one of the things you look for, and genuinely, if you could bottle that up and sell it, you're good for that, but it is genuinely something you can't teach. So know your story, be eloquent with it, and yeah, I think that'll be helpful as well.
All right, thank you. I think that is a high note to end the panel on. Thank you very much for the panelists and everyone joining here or online. The Sustainability Week will be ongoing the next week, and we will focus on climate, energy and waste, biodiversity, water and air are some of the topics which will be going on for a couple of next days. You can check the program of the event online and also sign up using the links. So I think we're probably still staying for a couple of minutes at the drinks outside. So if you have any more questions, I think they'll be happy to answer them outside. So thank you very much for joining.